Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, and this is a show where we hang out and we talk about games, role-playing games, board games, card games, sometimes computer games, games that inspire us, that are beautiful. They inspire beauty in thoughts, our discussions, our reactions, and really to focus on that as a way to kind of, as an antidote to sort of a lot of the negativity that we see in the world today, and hopefully come away as better gamers, players, GMs, and storytellers. And, if we become better people along the way, so be it. So today we're talking about near and far storytelling. And I often see people talking about, how do I get my players invested in my campaign? I have given them the big kick in the door moment. The big bad evil guy is off in the distance, and the game peters out. And we are to believe some of the statistics. Most campaigns last 6 to 12 sessions, and then we're done. By the way, before I forget, good morning to John and Grom and Spam Viking and Mark and Tink. Good to see all of you this morning. So what do I mean by near and far storytelling, which I think is an antidote for getting your players invested a little bit early on, a little bit easier. Consider this a cheat or a hack, if you will. Excuse me. Turns out crawling around in your attic before a stream running Ethernet cable gets insulation particles in your throat. So let's look at some of our favorite, or at least my favorite, novels. Wheel of Time, Thomas Covenant. Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. The Belgaria. And these are all fantasy ones, of course. What's the other one that I'm thinking of? Raymond Feist's Rift War. Star Wars. They all start in a very... Lord of the Rings. They all start in a very specific manner. They don't start with the far. They start with the near. We meet Luke buying droids for his aunt and uncle's farm. We meet Pug and Thomas as they're sitting in the castle on the far west. We meet Simon Mooncalf as he's in the Hayholt. We meet the hobbits in the Shire long before we know of any distant threat. And this kind of grounds us for a little bit, but I think it's very important, as Tolkien talked about, that it also shows us what's worth fighting for. The Lord of the Rings is important, or the quest to destroy the ring is important because it threatens not just everyone, but it threatens the Shire, which the four characters are from, which is also why, man, that end of the book, Scouring the Shire, hits so hard. Yes, Mark, gold, and we can talk about sandbox campaigns next week. We're going to see that as well. But even Keep on the Borderlands, you don't start at the Cave of Chaos. You start at the Keep. You start at seeing what's worth saving. Then you go into the far. In a lot of cases, we want to shortcut that. We want to get to the good stuff. We want the big bad evil guy's armies to be on the horizon. We want to jump to the middle of the action. I'm not saying don't do that. We'll talk about some ways to do that. But what I'm saying is it's easier to get people invested in a story if you start with the near. Yeah, Spam Viking, The Hobbit just adds another layer to that. So how do we do that? Let's go back to Gary's Keep on the Borderlands, or The Rising Knight, the A0 for Castles and Crusades, or any of these movies that kind of start the same way, these stories that we love, and see what we can kind of glean out from there. One, start local. You start with Deathanor, the Death Blight, is at your doorstep. Amber starts with kind of a local, as I remember. The guy just driving through his... doesn't he drive along a coast, and he's kind of set there before he heads out into the shadow? It's been a while since I read Amber. And yeah, Amber blows up. So start local. Give the players a starting point to care about. Whether that's a keep on a borderland, a small local village like Spire Shadow Vale. Well, it's a little teaser from an upcoming 13th Age adventure. One of the local towns or cities on the War Road. A place that you made up, but a place that they can call their home. A place they can come back to. And that's... the important bit, if that makes sense. Give them something to care about. Start off with your first couple of quests to be local things. Look at Rise of the Runelords. You start in a town, you start in Sandpoint with a festival where you meet all the NPCs. You learn how to play the game, but you're like meeting the NPCs. You're seeing the joy and the fun things that are going on. Then the goblins attack. That's your first quest. Save these people you just met from the goblins. Okay, now you're heroes. Now people like you. Now people are asking you to come hang out with them and go on a boar hunt or stay at their inn for free. Oh, and by the way, you may track some of these things. And so they kind of build out in concentric circles until finally you start to see the bigger picture of the threats that are now threatening this thing that your players have come to care for. I'm not saying your players can't care for a whole world or a whole plot or the life and death, world-ending threat that you have cooked up in your head. What I'm saying is, it's far easier to get them to care about that when it threatens something they already love. A couple of NPCs in a village, make them unique. Your players will probably latch onto the weirdest ones that you didn't prepare. Looking right at you, Mark. So start near. Give some context to the village, their starting point, whether that's their spaceship, their hometown, again, the keep. Then start sending them out on local threats that eventually tie back into your big threat. This assumes that you have a big plot campaign. Next week, we're going to talk about storytelling and sandboxing because, well, we'll talk about that next week. Give them some people to care about, give them a place to care about, that when the first signs of the far threat show up, they're going to want to be involved. It's far easier for us as humans to care about individuals than it is to care about large groups of people, whether that is a nation, a kingdom, a political party, a nationality. It's far easier for us to connect with individuals and far easier for us to blanket come up with an idea of how a group is. It's just the way it is. Make your players care about the individual and the small and the things that are near to them. And I guarantee they're going to get much more investment when the far threats show up and kick down their door or stomp on their town. An example from my AD&D game. My group has been slowly making their way up this river. They started off in a town of Botkenberg, or Malforton. dealing with some local threats. They kind of connected with some NPCs that kind of sent them out on some quests. But for the most part, they've been hanging out in this town called Botkenberg. They've put down roots. They've built up a house. They know all the local NPCs. They know all of the halflings in the halfling quarter. There were some threats to the town, and those were the ones that they jumped into. Those are the ones that they wanted to deal with. And when they kicked the anthill, and the next tier of threat took notice of them, they defended their town. They got it all built up. And unfortunately, the last time we had a TBK, that was our Empire Strikes Back episode, and it ended with the entire town being covered in frost. Thick, magical winter descended upon the town and froze all of the inhabitants in the city solid. And so now the group is like, well, what is it? Is it October yet? Because we got to get back to this. We got to deal with this because what we love has been taken from us. Spam Viking says, my players are selfish. I did a couple missions before a group of Null raided their village. Let's just say they ignored it until it's too late. I've been there as well. And sometimes your players want gold and glory. If that's what the group wants, when we talk next week, I would say if that's where your players' focus is, lean into it. That's the beauty of a sandbox thing. Deal with hooks, not threads. And we'll talk about that later. Hey, Praetorian Panzer, good to see you. We got to work on your Hyperborea character later today. So the village was blighted and sacrifice in the land was blighted. Well, now they've got a responsibility to deal with that. Hopefully, I mean, hit them with the consequence list. We'll talk. I mean, I know I've mentioned the consequence list in depth before, but we'll talk about that here next week. So next week we've got another campaign clinic and another in a series on storytelling. So we're going to start off with kind of how I define storytelling in gaming. I have run big, massive plots that the first session ties directly into the last session. I've run open world sandboxes, and I've got some advice on running both and kind of where I think the happy medium is. I'm really looking forward to sharing my thoughts on storytelling. The campaign clinic next week is going to be talking about how to run games for younger players. It's a question that John Doom brought up in our Discord, and I thought it was a great one. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on Behind the Screen talking about that next week. Some other news tonight, I'm going to be on the PEG channels, Pinnacle Entertainment Groups, talking with Manu of Street Wolves. No, Sprawl Runners. Manu of Sprawl Runners. We're going to be talking about Cyberpunk and Savage Worlds. So if you enjoy Savage Worlds, if you enjoy Cyberpunk, check it out anywhere that PEG is online. So Pinnacle has a Facebook group, multiple Facebook groups, a Twitch channel, and a YouTube channel. So I'll be on all of those tonight. Tomorrow for all of our patrons on the Iconic Production Patreon, the Bare Bones links will go out for the first Bare Bones adventure. Bob and I are very excited about this. If you're a member of the Iconic Patreon, you get it for free. If you're not a member of the Iconic Patronage, go over to patreon.com/Iconic Production and join. Even at $1 level, you're going to get this adventure that we're putting out. John Doom and Tinker Hellraiser have seen it, and they both seem to think that it is pretty cool. I think that's... Oh, the other thing is, if you are a member of our patronage at a Green Dragon level or above, big thanks to Tinker Hellraiser for doing up the new art for all of the tiers. We've just scheduled our first Dragon Moot, which will just be an hour hangout once a month with me. We'll have some whiskey. I may post a cocktail recipe for people of that tier or above to make and share as we hang out and just talk games, answer any questions, talk about the patronage. So that's it. That's the end of our show for today. It's a short one. It's a sweet one. I think near and far storytelling is pretty easy concept to wrap your head around. Also, if you're an author, I'd highly recommend giving it a shot as well. make your players or make your audience care about what's near before you introduce what's far away. So that's it. We'll be back Tuesday with some more behind the screen. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I'm JM. This has been Behind the Screen, and I will see you all next week. Until then, have a good one, everyone.